Okay, hello and welcome back to the Tarpen two-stroke engine restoration, rebuild, or strip down, whatever you want to call it. This is the Tarpen engine that we've seen in the previous video in part 1, and as you can see it's got a few bits taken off it, and also there's a slightly different carburetor on it. The carburetor that we had originally is this one here. It's a AML carburetor with a 1-inch fitting. Is mechanically governed by the electronic governor box. So basically when you rev or when the engine's put under load from the generator, it'll open up the throttle and give it more fuel and air. So that's not really ideal for what we want. We want to be able to set it at set speed or increase the speed whenever we need it. So that is no longer in use and will not be needed, so I can go. I found this carburetor, which is a pretty similar design and style AML. There goes part of the exhaust. And the air filter is off the original carburetor. So this one is throttle governed with a spring and slide. And what's interesting, it has this slight modification to the carburetor, and I think it's homemade, or maybe it's been put on by the previous company, as this carburetor was off a uni-twin 15 horsepower Anzani outboard. So basically what you do with that is you pull it down and it floods the carburetor and lets fuel in, primes it before you start it. Fortunately it's a perfect fit. It's 1-inch stub, so nothing has to be milled down, machined down, which is very good. As you can see, the exhaust is off, and basically the thinking behind that is that, if you remember correctly, the exhaust came out and went down and faced the piece of wood that's holding it in place. So that wasn't ideal and would need to be moved in some way. So since doing that, I've chopped the exhaust into 2 pieces, this one and that one, and we now have the 2 flanges that need to be sanded down a bit or grinded down a bit so they're nice and flush and clean, ready to be welded again. Now this bit, you may recognise it if you've seen the previous video on the pt2 AA1 diesel engine, is the exhaust, what's left of the exhaust off that diesel engine. So my thinking is that I will use one of these, probably that one because it's got a bit more length and I can put a back box on it for the silencer. And I will use this one on the diesel as it fits in nicely, and I'll weld it together when I'm doing this welding. So we will have an exhaust for this with a silencer, albeit rudimental, but it will be there. So that's the exhaust side of the engine. As for the fuel tanks, we now have 2 options for fuel tanks. We have an old ATCO one I was given recently from the scrap pile, and a old aluminium one that came with the 2 Villiers engines. So we'll see. I think it will probably be the aluminium one. I haven't seen inside the ATCO one yet. It might be really rusty, and if not, if it's nice and clean inside, then I'll use that because it'll be easy to mount. We're still no farther forward with getting this little flange off. I believe it's screw fit. Like, it should just unscrew with the crank staying still. I'm not too sure. It'd be nice to get it off, and we will at one point, but it's not too much of a problem at this moment in time. So yeah, that's basically the engine for this moment in time. There will be a part 3, part 4. Hopefully by part 3 we will have more parts to it. I'll be able to have mounted the petrol tank and have made an exhaust for it. So yeah, it's coming along nicely, and it shouldn't take too much to get running. It's one of those projects where it's not necessarily high up on the priority list. It can be done whenever I'm doing something that's related to it. So obviously I need to weld up an exhaust for the pt2, so I'll weld up this one at the same time. I was waiting on fuel taps for the tank, so I needed a carburetor. That's only just come in the post. So it's there's a lot of things that are all going into these engines, and yeah. Either way, this is part 2. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.